So time for my preview for the 2023 Formula 1 Canadian Grand Prix, which of course is taking place at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal this coming weekend. So just first to take a look back at the 2022 race. It was of course the first race after 2 years off because of coronavirus, and it was won from pole position by Max Verstappen after a wet qualifying session. Second was Carlos Sainz, and third was Lewis Hamilton, who I believe got his second podium this season, his first being in the 2022 Bahrain Grand Prix. Some of the memorable moments from that last year's race were Leclerc recovering to 5th place from 19th on the grid after having to take an engine penalty after retiring from the Azerbaijan Grand Prix with an engine failure. In the same race, Perez had a gearbox failure in the race after crashing in qualifying, and Tsunoda had a somewhat memorable crash, coming out of the pit lane. And of course, there was also the really nice strategy battle as well between Verstappen and Sainz, both of them pitting during safety car VSC and green flag conditions multiple times. So there was some nice lead changes on strategy, not on track though. So the tires for this weekend, the C3, the hard, the C4, the medium, and the C5, the soft. Of course, one of the particularities of this track is that there are a lot of very low speed chicanes, and there's a couple of hairpins as well, or no, just the one hairpin really. So there's not a lot of high speed corners, so it's a very different track from Barcelona, which we were just at. And I think it's a bit similar to Baku in some respects in that there's lots of slow speed corners and long straights as well. And that was a circuit that really suited the Ferraris, so I do expect them to be quite strong this weekend. The slow speed corners as well should favor Aston Martin. They've been pretty good in slow speed corners. In Baku, I know they weren't so good, but a lot of that was due to some really poorly timed DRS issues that the team had in qualifying. But that being said, it's very different from Baku. Even though it is a street circuit, the track is quite smooth and it's rarely used except for this weekend for race cars or for cars in general. So that's why they're bringing the softest tires in the range. And overtaking is possible, especially down the going into the hairpin and going into the final chicane where the Wall of Champions is. What else? Let's see. Oh yeah, because of those hard braking, lots of slow speed corners from high speed long straights, this is a track that can be quite hard on the brakes, so it is pretty fair to expect that there will be some retirements due to brake issues in the race. And cars that have struggled with brakes so far this year, although I can't really think of any off the top of my head that have, those are cars that will really struggle this weekend. Also of note, I think among the top 4 teams, Stroll has generally had a pretty good track record at his home Grand Prix. I believe he's finished at the points every race except for 2018, where of course he infamously crashed on the first lap with Brendan Hartley. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. I don't expect a podium. I think the competition for that last podium spot is going to be pretty tough, so I don't expect him to challenge for the podium. But a 4th or 5th place would be a really good result for him. So for some predictions for the weekend, I'm not sure what the weather forecast is. I expect it should be dry. Haven't really seen otherwise. But again, I would expect Red Bull 1-2 both in qualifying and in the race, as we've seen through most of the season. That being said, of course, we may have a surprise DNF or a surprise crash or an incident which caused that not to take place. But I think really, like most races this season, I think really what's up for debate is that next position at 3rd place. And I do think Charles Leclerc has a good chance of getting 3rd place. He does have a fairly decent record around this track, even though it's a pretty short record. He did come back from 19th to 5th last year, as I said. But that being said, I think Ferrari should be a good car, I think, in qualifying especially, so if he can keep the other cars behind, especially the Aston Martins and the Mercedes, I do think he has a good chance of getting that podium. But then again, with the Aston Martins, I would expect Alonso to be with a chance of a podium as well as Lewis Hamilton, who of course scored his first win in Formula 1 on this track. So that's all for the Canadian Grand Prix preview. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments below, who do you think will win this weekend, and probably more. And while it will probably be Max Verstappen, who do you think will get 3rd place on the podium? Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.